All right, it is time to look at who should be on your waiver wire wish list heading into week 8. A lot of things certainly coming together. Guys coming back from injuries, other guys being lost to injury, and guys just not performing well, same as it sort of ever was. Go at the quarterback position. Teddy Bridgewater, who continues to be a streaming option, who has another outstanding matchup coming this week against the Atlanta Falcons. So he should probably be top of mind if you need a quarterback for week 8. Couple of running back options. Chase Edmonds, we saw Kenyon Drake suffer an ankle injury on Sunday night. Now, the early reports are that everything was negative on x-ray. Is scheduled to have an MRI on Monday, so something to keep an eye on. But on top of it, Edmonds has probably just outplayed Drake for most of the year. JaMycal Hasty, another name to keep in mind. Jeff Wilson had a huge day for the 49ers, but then he suffered what's being called a high ankle sprain and is likely to miss some time there. So Hasty might get some more opportunity, especially because Jerick McKinnon barely played. Wide receivers, Nelson Aguilar, Brandon Aiyuk, Rashard Higgins, obviously, with Odell Beckham Jr. out for the rest of the year. Scotty Miller still getting looks down there in Tampa. And then at the tight end spot, Harrison Bryant, a name to remember after a couple of touchdowns on Sunday for the Browns. Let's start though with Chase Edmonds there, because we mentioned the injury to Kenyon Drake. But Kimmy, I think it's just hard to argue. Chase Edmonds has just played better even when Drake's been healthy this year.
He has, and that's why I'm so confused and wondering why he's only rostered, in 32% of NFL.com leagues. If you listen to Marcus or myself or Florio or Rank all season long, his name has been on the waiver wire, I think, every single week since week 1 or week 2, because you're right. He has outplayed Kenyon Drake every single week, and he continues to do so. He rushed 5 times for 58 yards and caught all 7 of his targets for 87 yards, finishing with 21.5 fantasy points against the Seahawks. Now, if you do pick up Edmonds, be careful because they are on a bye this week, but once they return, they go to play the Miami Dolphins and then the Buffalo Bills and then the Seahawks yet again. I think Chase Edmonds is my number 1 priority on the waiver wire this week, and he's going to continue to be until everyone fully gets on board and realizes this guy is a dynamic threat on the football field, not only because he runs, but he's also involved in the passing game. We saw how well Kyler Murray and him both played last night, so get him into your lineup and stop sleeping on Chase Edmonds.
I mean, maybe the biggest numbers, these 7 catches for 87 yards. I mean, just doing damage in the passing game. And, he's sort of doing what Kenyon Drake did last year. He just doesn't get the number of snaps or touches that we saw from Drake late last season. And maybe this conversation is less for the fantasy managers out there and more for Cliff Kingsbury. Like, why are you still rolling with Kenyon Drake as your lead running back here when Edmonds has certainly shown that he's deserving of more opportunities? And look, you're right. There is a bye coming up this week for Arizona, so that's something to keep in mind. But if you have the opportunity to stash him, if you just need running back help for the future, and you have somebody on your roster that you can drop, Chase Edmonds should be very high on your priority list this week to add, because he's the guy who I think is going to be the closer to the workhorse in Arizona moving forward. Another name to mention, Brandon Aiyuk, who the rookie from Arizona State has played really well, I think, for the 49ers this year. Part of it, though, Deebo Samuel suffered a hamstring injury late in the win over the Patriots. And I know, Kimmy, he's not necessarily a household name yet, but I think, again, if you're looking ahead and you're looking to stash a guy that has some upside late in the season, it seems like Brandon Aiyuk is a guy that you might want to keep an eye on.
Right, and also just think about the big name notable injuries that we had yesterday at the wide receiver position, like Odell Beckham Jr. I'm not saying that Brandon Aiyuk is going to completely step up and fill that role, but if you need help at the wide receiver position, you have to look at this guy. He's only rostered in 10% of NFL.com leagues, even though he led the team in targets and receptions yesterday in that huge win over the New England Patriots. Now, with 115 receiving yards against a usually tough Patriots secondary, even though that was a really tough game for them, I think Brandon Aiyuk has proved his work in that 49er offense, and he must be utilized next week, especially against the Seahawks and what we know for sure will be a Russell Wilson shootout. We saw how well Russell Wilson played yesterday. That means the 49ers are going to have to try to keep up with that and throw the ball, and I could see Brandon Aiyuk being on the receiving end of that.
Absolutely. When you talk about the Seahawks matchup being the next one on the docket there for the 49ers, that I think makes it even more imperative that you go out and you try to add Brandon Aiyuk this week. I have been impressed with, one, the way he plays, but more than that, with how Kyle Shanahan wants to get him the football. I mean, you see here they're using him downfield as a threat. I mean, if Jimmy Garoppolo makes a better throw on that long ball, then Aiyuk probably scores a touchdown there. But they're still trying to get him the ball. Early on, they were using him on jet sweeps and as a runner, so they want to get the ball in his hands. There is a reason that the 49ers traded up to get Brandon Aiyuk. They want to use him, and I think especially if Deebo Samuel has to miss time, which is certainly very possible, then I think Aiyuk is going to get a whole lot more work. George Kittle's going to get his. You don't have to worry about that. But I think Aiyuk is a guy that is going to be out there. You mentioned Chase Edmonds probably is your top priority. I think that's going to be the case. I would say Rashard Higgins is going to get some looks. I'd like to try to figure out what's going on with that 49ers backfield with JaMychal Hasty and Jerick McKinnon, and who knows, Mostert's going to be back soon, and Tevin Coleman, and I think Roger Craig and Tom Rathman, and you can keep going back and back and back to however many running backs you want to find there in San Francisco. But I think it's probably worth your while to try to pick a guy that you think is going to get some touches because, you just really never know there. Anybody else that didn't make the list that you think might be worthwhile picking up this week?
No, so he made the list, but I just want to double down. You guys, Teddy Bridgewater has been fantastic. And I know we talked about him last week and he was on your list this week. Before I was hyping up Andy Dalton more as I'm going to go grab Andy Dalton on the waiver wire. And I think he could be a top 15 fantasy quarterback just because of that offense and how bad the defense is. So they have to throw the ball. No, take that away. Done with Andy Dalton. Clearly, I want to focus on Teddy Bridgewater. If you need another streaming option at quarterback, like Marcus said, Teddy Two Gloves is going up against the Atlanta Falcons this week. He should be a must start. He's playing really well. We were talking about DJ Moore and